This is Colin Dixon with nScreen Media, and I'm at NAB 2016, and I'm on the Paywizard booth, and I'm talking to Bhavesh Vaghela, and he is Chief Marketing Officer for Paywizard. Now, Bhavesh, you've just done some really interesting research on OTT services and people's relationship with those services. It seems like things are very different depending on if you're a tier 1 SVOD provider and a tier 2. Can you talk a little bit about that difference?
No, absolutely. I think, we ran some focus groups both in the UK and in the US. We looked at consumers as to when they'd signed up to a service, how they felt about the service when they're using it, how they cancelled the service, and what was that process. And it's very interesting. I mean, besides the big three, the Amazon, the Netflix, and the Hulu's as well, where consumers have multiple subscriptions to those providers. Outside of that, there really is a dip in, dip out service. I mean, dip approach mindset. Consumers will go in to view that piece of content or view that seasonality or whatever it is that they're looking for, and then they'll leave that service with the aim of coming back if the service was right.
And so that dip in, dip out behaviour, talk a little bit about that. How many people are actually doing that? Is that very, very common outside of the top three?
It certainly appears to be. I mean, when we did some actual quantitative research before Christmas, we looked at this idea of people's view on signing up to an OTT service. And what we found is prior to Christmas, there was a huge intention to sign up and arguably sign up to multiple services. But we also saw that consumers were more than likely to cancel within a 6-month period of sign-up. So they saw it as, okay, I want to use it for that period of time, and then I'm not likely to use it anymore. So that dip in, dip out service was validated even further when we did the focus groups, where consumers were actually saying, do you know what, I do want to view that piece of content, but I'm not likely to stay very long with them, but I want to be able to come back to it when I'm ready. And actually that process of building that customer experience throughout that entire journey makes a massive difference towards keeping that customer. And
so that means for the smaller providers, this is very difficult, right? Because Absolutely. They have to approach their customers in a much different way.
Yes.
So for example, they should expect that a customer would leave them.
Yes.
What can they do to mitigate that, to keep them, to stop them leaving, and then to get them back?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting because we've really looked at it from a point of view of the customer experience. So what are the steps that we as consumers will go through towards signing up and using the service? And it's actually really about understanding the customer, their behaviour, what the reason they signed up for in the first place. Don't treat them like a churn customer. Don't treat them like, oh, they've gone away. Treat them like a customer that's just not active. What can you do to entice them to come back? If you knew, for example, they were a massive fan of a particular piece of content, and the next season of that content arrives, and actually market to them in a very clever way, looking at enticing them back to the service, maybe with an offer, the right type of offer to come back for that particular period of time. There's a lot brands can do with really understanding the customer behaviour, their view in terms of what they use the system for, the service for, and then actually leverage that insight into the way they market to them.
And so that means that you're really, for smaller providers, they're really in marketing mode 100% of the time with their customers, right?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely 100% of the time you've got to be marketing to them. You've got to be, and marketing to them in a way that's relevant to that individual. Don't just blanket market for the customer. You've got to know what's relevant for that individual, what the sign-up process was for that customer, what did they consume before they left, what was the cancellation process like, are they the sort of person that comes in every 6 months, every year, every 9 months, what's the trigger point that always brings them back to you, and you leverage that information in the way actually you market it.
So talk about the cancellation process a little bit, because if you have to expect that a lot of your customers, maybe the majority of your customers are cancelling and coming back in, should you handle cancellation in a slightly different way?
Absolutely, you should. I mean, it's a bit counterintuitive because, most of the time when you've got a customer on board, we will do whatever we can to keep them there, right? That's what we want to do. The reality is, it came out loud and clear with the consumer groups. If you make it a simple and easy process to cancel, so I can go onto my account, I can cancel, or even postpone my account, or whatever you want to call it, then actually that process makes it I'm more likely to cancel and come back again based on that level of service. You know, if you make it incredibly difficult for me to leave, and it becomes an absolute nightmare, you try and offer me something at that point, but you know what? Chances are I'm not going to come back to you. Loud and clear. It's very, 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 very obvious. And actually, as consumers, we would expect that anyway.
So it sounds like the best attitude to have is, even if they're not paying you, they're still customers, right?
Absolutely. You have to treat them like customers. I mean, they are a customer of consumption of your content, have been before. There's no reason why they won't come back again. If you treat them well throughout that entire journey, they will come back again.
Any other big learnings from the research? You did this in 6 countries, 6,000, 5,000
Yeah, absolutely.
people?
So we did 1,000 people in each country just before Christmas, ranging from the UK, US, Germany, Brazil and so forth, and Asia. And then focus groups where we did UK and the US. And I think there's some interesting things around the sign-up process. One of the things that came up was that human interaction during sign-up. So the idea of using web chat, for example, at the point of sign-up, when somebody's unsure, got a view on whether they're going to continue to sign up or not, makes a massive difference. Things like, how do you help the customer navigate your service? Now that sounds pretty obvious because everybody knows how to use a Netflix type of service, but not everybody's on that same demographic. Not everybody's got a view on it. Now, how do you help the silver surfer versus the baby boomer versus the millennial, leveraging the different bits of content within the service? And that came out very loud and clear. It's going to help me navigate and use that. One thing that was very interesting for me actually was the idea of personalization recommendation. While it's talked about a lot in the industry, most consumers thought it was off the mark, really. A lot of the recommendations and personalization that was provided by even the big 3 wasn't exactly the sort of.
So they didn't feel it worked very well?
It didn't work for them. They wanted better search. They wanted better ways of navigating the content. So things that you think are standard and need to be standard in the service weren't performing as well as perhaps they should be.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I hope, I know you're going to share some of that data with me, so I'm going to be writing that up and I'll make sure that I make that available to some of my readers.
Yeah,
Bhavesh, have a great show. This has been a great conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This has been Colin Dixon with nScreen Media.